Good night, everyone.
Good night. Good evening.
Good evening, actually. Yes, you're not going to bed yet. I think I'm sleepy. So good evening, everyone. I'm very glad to be here once again with you to share a little bit about our Spiritist doctrine, our search for inner peace and self-renovation, because that's why we are here together. That's why we get together to learn from one to another the path for peace. So we are going to talk this night about the power of thought applied to health and sickness. So Spiritism is a science and a philosophy with religious consequence. In its roots, we have scientific basis. And Allan Kardec has taught us about this in the book, What is Spiritism? And he said that Spiritism is a science that studies the nature, the very own nature of the spirit and its relationship with matter. The spirit itself is immaterial, but in order to express in this level or in this dimension that we are, we use the matter. But we do not exist only in one dimension. We exist in multidimension. We are multidimensional persons. So we need matter that express our reality in every and each dimension that we exist. That's why Allan Kardec taught us that we have what he called perispirit. Peri is a Greek prefix that means around the, and the spirit is the spirit. So what is the perispirit? It's the name that we give to the bodies that surround the spirits and allow the spirit manifestation in every dimension where it exists. The spirit itself is an intelligent principle of the universe. And this intelligent principle comes from the supreme intelligence of the universe, the supreme cause of everything, which is the definition that we give to God. That was the first question of the Spirit's book, what is God? And the Spirit said, the supreme intelligence of the universe. So, as the spirits, we are divine creations. And we come from the supreme source of intelligence as individualized intelligence, and we evolve from the simplicity and ignorance to the perfection that we can reach in our evolutionary path. So this is a process that takes centuries and millennia. So the spirit initially evolves through the inferior reigns of the nature, the mineral, the vegetal, and the inferior animal reigns, and then individualized, this spiritual principle becomes spirit itself with consciousness and continuous thought, and then start to evolve by its free will or the ability to make choices and the responsibility to deal with the natural consequences of its choice. So, what it's very important for us this night to understand is that thought, it's not a consequence of a neurochemical process in our brain. Our thoughts come from our minds, and our minds are located in our mental body. Our mental body, it's a part of this amount of bodies that we have in order for the spirit to express its reality. So, the waves of thought come from the mind as an expression of the spirit, as an expression of its will. And then these waves takes a path to the physical body. That means that these waves passes through all the bodies that we have between the physical body and the mental body, and then control all the function in this path. Which kind of bodies do we have between the physical body and the mental body? We have what we call etheric body, and the other what we call astral body. In Spiritism, we only study these two. The Oriental ones usually tell us that we have 7 bodies. But in Spiritism, in our science, in our philosophy, we usually study these 3. Etheric body, astral body, and mental body. The etheric body are fulfilled by vital energy. The vital energy is the source of life. The vital body is responsible to animalize the matter, and that is what allows us to live in the matter. So only we incarnated have this etheric body filled by vital energy. When we discarnate, when we die, when our body decomposes and come back to the materia, our vital body also decomposes itself and is dispersed into the nature. So we only have in the spiritual realm the astral body and the mental body as an expression for the spirit. The astral body, also called the emotional body, is the source of life in the spiritual realm. It's controlled by the mental body. So everything that happens with the astral body is controlled by the patterns that come from the mind. That means that the astral body reflects what we think, what we feel, and what we are. It's a natural reflection of our inner life. It's composed by the energies that we absorb from nature, from the environment, and also those which we produce inside of us when we think, when we feel, and when we act. So the astral body is a body that has many specific potentials. Allan Kardec studied that in the book Genesis. There he studies the principles or the characteristics of the perispirit, but almost all characteristics of the perispirit that he describes there are characteristics from the astral body. So the astral body can manifestate light, can expand, can change its forms, can be plastic. That means that its form and its nature can be changed by the nature of the mind. And all these fluidic phenomena are guided by the waves that come from the mental body. So it's very important for us to understand that the brain is necessary for life in our plan, but it's not the source of the thoughts. The thoughts come from the mind. The brain are the equipment, are the machine that we use in order to express our thoughts in this material dimension. So I like to compare our brain and our mind with the computer. In order for us to have this computer, we only need the machine or the pieces that composed the computer. Is that enough?
No.
Yes or no?
No.
It's a question for the incarnated ones. Otherwise, you will sleep. You will fall asleep. So, we need the machine and what else?
Brain.
And the brain. What is the brain of the computer? It called software. That means the programs that runs the computer. So we take the pieces, we take the software, so the hardware and the software, we took them together and we have what we call the computer. Our brain is our hardware. The mind is our software. So the mind produces the mental waves that runs our brain and make our brain functions in this or in that direction, in this or that sense, with sickness or with healthy. That it's a natural consequences of what we produce within. When our brain gets sick, our mind continues to function. That's what we can see when we have those experiences that are called the near-death experience. So when someone has a cardiac arrest and it's considered to be dead for some times during a process of resuscitation, then come back and tell all the memories that he or she had during that process. Why that happens? That happens because the consciousness is not located on the brain. The consciousness is out of the brain, is located on our mental body and beyond our mental body, because the consciousness is a manifestation of the spirit itself. So when our brain gets sick, our mind with our thoughts continue to function. We not always remember what happens out of the body when we have, for example, our experiences out of the body during the night or during the near-death experience, because our brain as a machine don't have the natural structures that are needed in order to remember everything. So we don't remember all our spiritual phenomena because we don't have a brain that can sustain all this memory. But some people has a sensibility to a certain level of memory. Some people have an ability to get out of the body awake or conscious and come back with all the memories because their brain were prepared during the process of reincarnation in order to remember those specific experience. So our mind produces the waves of thought, and these waves are always in tune with another source of waves, which is our affective life. So I used to say that mind, thoughts, and affection are a couple that they're always together. They never separated. When one is, the other is still there, because they walk together. That means that the thoughts produce feelings, the feelings produce thoughts, and this is a natural process that goes on and on all the time. Certainly, we can understand and we can study the isolated effect or process of each one, mental waves or affective waves. But commonly, they are in a close connection. They are bond, and we can understand them together. Okay? Am I being clear?
Yes.
Okay. So here you have an illustration by Alex Gray, which I like a lot, of all this process. So take a note of this process. You can see that the mental wave comes from a very specific point, from the middle of our brain. What point is that? How we call it? Is the pineal gland. The pineal gland is the chain for our mental and spiritual reality. So our mental waves come from within, from the most deep part of ourselves, from the mental body, and then arise in the material through the pineal gland. And from there, the mental waves goes to the vast area of our brain, producing specific phenomena in each part of the brain. So these waves that came from the mind is exteriorized by our chakra that is located here, which is called the frontal chakra. This is the
Third eye?
yes, or also the third eye. The third eye is a term from the Orientals. we use in Spiritism the term frontal chakra, or frontal center of force, which is more specific from the Spiritism. Chakra, it's also our word that was not established in the Spiritist movement, but also in the Oriental reality. So this chakra, it's connected to our ability to think, in our ability to have criticism, in our ability to understand life. So this wave exteriorizate from this chakra and look for other waves that are in the same synchrony. So this is a phenomena of how it's called? Resonance. I forgot the word in Portuguese and in English. That's a brain a problem, not a problem of the mind. So when the wave exteriorizate, it produces a phenomenon of magnetic resonance, which means that look for the waves that vibrate in the same level and establish a deep and personal connection that produce a second wave much bigger than the isolated first. So this phenomena of resonance happens all the time. That means that when we think and when we feel, we establish connection with those who think and feel like us. The incarnated ones, the discarnated ones, the mental waves that circulate around our material and spiritual environment, the reality that vibrate in the same level. Each mental wave has one form and one speed. That means has a size and has a frequency. The inferior waves that are connected to the matter, to the things that we live in our daily lives, they have a big wave, a big amplitude, and a low frequency. That means that are waves like this. But the high waves, those that are connected to our spiritual nature, to the elevate feelings that we have low amplitude and high frequency. So they are like this, and have a big power of penetration in matter and production of effects. So as elevated as it is, our feelings and our thoughts, more deep we go in the effects of this reality in ourselves and around us. So you can see here that not only these waves exteriorizate from the frontal chakra, but also it produces a magnetic field around us. Here is represented by this fire, which means the nature of the magnetic vibration that surround us. This vibration are produced within, with our actions and decisions, and establish a natural environment, a natural spiritual environment around us. Everybody with sensibility that come closer to us can feel this magnetic field and can realize what happens with us and what is our nature. We have this phenomena very naturally in our daily lives, but we do not pay attention to that. Is that kind of situation that when we arrive to certain places, or when we get in touch with someone, we feel something bad, or we feel something good, or we feel that our feeling expand and we feel love, or our feeling contracts and we feel anguish. What is that? Is the contact of the magnetic fields of the other and ours as well that produce this feeling on us. So we should pay attention to that phenomena, because this happens very naturally and give us a clue to what kind of situation we are involved in and what we can do in order to have a better and healthy reality there. So here you have another example of these waves producing the magnetic field. Naturally, this guy is praying, he is meditating, he is in contact with the divine nature of himself and of the universe. So you can see that his cardiac chakra, which is connected to the feeling and to the deep sentiment, is enlightened, and also is his pineal gland, which express the nature of the vibration that comes from his mental body. He produces a specific magnetic field around his head that we can usually see represented on the paintings by that kind of halo. That's the saints, that characterize the saints. What is that? It's the magnetic field with high level of vibration that produce a natural magnetic field of protection, of connection with goodness. So pay attention to this quote from Emmanuel. Just like spiders live surrounded by their own web, men spend their lives submerged in their own thoughts. I like very much this image. The spiders choose where it's gonna put the web, the lines of the web. The web is constructed by the spider, but whenever the web is ready, the spider lives in the middle of this web, and this web is the source of movement, to capture the food and to feed that spider. It's the source of protection. So the spider leaves what the web captures. That happens also with us. We produce the magnetic field that surrounds us. We exteriorizate the vibrations that are connected to our mental and emotional waves and patterns. So we decide the nature of the spiritual web that we determine. We establish the connection between minds and feelings. We make the process of spiritual synchronization. Spiritual synchronization. So we are the result of what we choose and what we produce to ourselves. So that means that we can choose and produce what kind of energy and vibration we want, but we will be the reality captured by this vibration, by this spiritual net. That's very important for us. Some people say, I don't know what happened with me. I have changed my life, I have changed my country, I have changed my job, I have changed my husband or my wife, but nothing has changed. And this happened because although you have changed country, husband, wife, and job, you took himself with you, and wherever you are, you are with you. And producing the same net, you continue to attract the same situations to you. So we are never victim. Never happens to us by chance. We decide the nature of what happens with us by deciding the nature of this magnetic field that surrounds us. That is very important to understand. So these waves that are exteriorized from us not only look for those who vibrate in the same synchrony, but also produce forms. We call these mental forms. They are alive. They are sustained by our mental waves. So, for example, surrounding us, we have a source of fluid that we called the basic fluid of the universe. how we call it in English?
Cosmic fluid.
Universal cosmic fluid. So it's the universal cosmic fluid. This fluid is like the water. The water is basic, is available to produce everything. If I take a fruit and I take the extract of this fruit and take it into the water, so the water will have taste, will have color, smell, it will have another density different from the pure water. So now I don't have water anymore, I have a juice. It's right? So it's the same with the cosmic fluid, the universal cosmic fluid. Our mental and emotional waves produce an effect on this fluid, producing forms around us. That means that everything that we sustain continuously inside our mental and emotional waves takes form around us. Not the quick thoughts or feelings that we have. This arrives in our spiritual reality as trovão, relâmpago, as a thunder. They enlight and disappear. But what we sustain so continues to exist. So if I think, for example, in an apple, and I think this apple continuously, so this apple becomes a reality around me. It's an apple made by fluid. But this apple will have color, will have shape, will have content, will have even taste if someone take and can taste it. It depends on the force of my mental wave. So our mental waves produce forms, and our emotional waves produce contents to these forms, and then fulfill these forms with the nature of our emotional being. That means if that apple was given to me by someone that I love, to someone that is important to me, so that apple not only will exist in my magnetic field, but also will become a reality full of love, full of joy, full of that sentiments that were produced by the process of receiving that from someone that I love. But imagine if I sustain in my within my sentiment of emotional wound, for example. Mágoa. Wound. Emotional wound. How I say mágoa? Hurt. Yeah. Imagine that someone did something to me and that hurted me a lot, and then I keep the sentiment of angry, the anguish that produced in me, and I keep I keep feeling that once again and again and again all over the years. So that become a reality around me, that produce a form, and this form is not only alive but also has the content of that feelings that I have feed all of the years. That means that I will have a source of emotional wound here around me. So one time I decide to forgive, and I decide to let things back. I decide to go to another posture in my life. So the first thing is, I have all that deposit surround me. So what I have to do, I have to be persistent, because the first thing is difficult to start the movement to let that go. And sometimes that is so connected to our matter that is difficult to disconnect that from our magnetic reality. That's why forgive sometimes is so hard, and we need to try, and you need to persist, and we need to be vigilant, and we need to pray, to ask for the strength that we need in order to face the consequence that what we have produced, because everyone can do what they want with us, but only us can decide what will be the consequence, because we are not what we have lived. We are what we interpret from what we have lived. We are not victims. We are the masters of our destiny. That means that when we reinterpret something, when we resignificate something, we change what happened with us. No matter if that was a trauma, an emotional or physical trauma, or a difficult that we have lived. That doesn't mean that the other person does not have responsibility on it. Yes, the other person has, but the responsibility is his or hers. We only have our own responsibility, and the responsibility we took in that process that have hurted us. So, when we keep ourselves wounded, we sustained a situation of self-punishment. And we do that because we do not accept the reality that we are responsible for ourselves and we are the masters of our life. So we keep waiting others to take care of us instead of taking care of ourselves. We insist that others should give us the love and attention that we need instead of giving us the love and attention that we have already noticed that we need. So, what characterizes our adulthood is that, different from the child, we are responsible for our acts. No matter if I have inside of me a hurt child that claim all the time and complain all the time for the situations, but now as an adult, I take my child in my arms. I give to this child what he or she didn't had. And then I assume the responsibility for the present. I do not leave the past where I didn't have. I assume that now I give to me what lacks in my history. And that means that I am my own master. I am the responsible, and I am the one that decides what I will live and what I will be right now. That means inner renewal, inner renovation, self-transformation, and whatever we can call. But this starts when we decide to give us what we need, instead of waiting from others to give what we think it's our lacks. So the adult that continues to accuse its history, it's not an adult, it's still a child. The adult do not accuse. The adult assume its own responsibility. Those who continue to accuse the history, the characters of the history, did not understood yet that our history is made by our own spiritual choices, by our own spiritual seeds that we have chosen in other incarnations and in this life in order to have those tests and those experiences that we need to develop the virtues that nowadays as a spirit we know that we need to develop, or we have the opportunity to do it. So it's very important to understand that this magnetic field is really a reality and is a consequence of ourselves. So when I assume that I will give myself what I need, I change this magnetic field. No matter if I continue to be hurted, but if I assume that I am my master and I need to develop the ability or to find the tools to give myself what I need, so I change the nature of this vibration. One day I was very touched in my heart when I saw a spirit, a very high spirit, tell us that whenever we decide to transformate ourselves, we enlighten our chakras, even though we haven't already changed ourselves. So this spirit told us that every time a person decides to be responsible for itself, all the chakra, all the magnetic field enlighten with the process of taking responsibility. That means that we start to feel the consequences. It's like a medicine that we pass in this wound, allowing this wound to be healed step by step through time. And it takes time. It takes patience. It takes process. That's why forgive and self-forgive as well, it's not a moment, it's a process that we start and we should feed every time in order to reach that goal, to find that place of peace and love inside our hearts. So, thinking is creating, said Emmanuel. Although the reality of such creation may not be automatically visible in the field of transitory effects, the object that is created by the power of thought still lives in one's inner self and requires special efforts to be either extinguished or continued. It's very important what Emmanuel said. He said that we are always creating, and these effects produce in us other effects. What he is telling us is that we produce everything around us. So I think that this image is, in resume, it's an abstract of all the things that we need to understand in this process of the construction of our magnetic field. So, you see that this guy is painting, so he's producing something. He decides to create something. He thinks that he is doing something by himself, but he is in a mediunic process, a natural mediunic process, conducted by his spiritual synchrony. So you can see that he vibrates a magnetic field full of levels. And this magnetic field, as you can see by the color, is in tune with a very high spirit that inspires him directly. So this spirit irradiates his thoughts and feeling through his mental body, here expressed by the pineal gland. That means that their thoughts are in close connection. So he irradiates through all their chakras the nature of vibration that he produces and that he absorbs from this spirit. All the painting is fulfilled by this vibration. That means that all the creation gets the same vibration that he irradiates during the process of doing. You can see here. And what happens when he does that? He attracts all those who are in tune, who are in the same synchrony, all those who want to help him, all those who are interested by that situation. That's what the Spirit's book teaches us, that we attract the spirits that are in synchrony with our decisions, with what we decide to do, with the result of our free will. But you can also see that here you have another kind of spirits. Can you see? Here you have another kind of spirits. So is it possible to close just for a moment this light, to turn down? Take a look.
Wow.
So you can see that here there's another kind of spirits. They are vibrating in another kind of waves. Is it possible that these spirits affect him? In this situation, is it possible that these spirits affect him?
No.
No, why not?
He's protected.
Why he's protected?
Good thoughts. His vibrations higher.
Yes, by his own magnetic field. So you can see that all the field surround him. It's a natural source of protection that expel those who are not in tune with that same vibration. But you can imagine that sometimes this guy, it's not so vigilant. Sometimes this guy, it's not so aware about the nature of feeling or thought that he produced, and then he changed the nature of this magnetic field. And then what happens? These people took place. They take place and they control all the process. So Allan Kardec asked in the Spirit's book, is it possible that the Spirit itself changed the nature of the spiritual obsession? And the answer is yes. And sometimes by weak efforts. And how few make efforts, they say. And Allan Kardec also asked, so what the spirits, the bad spirits or the inferior spirits do when they are put apart from that person by self-renovation? And the Spirit answers, what would you like them to do? They become a part of it, but they behave as the cat looking for the rat. That means they wait the moment to establish another synchrony, another connection, because that process is not healed yet.
Cat and mouse.
Yes, cat and mouse. So, these guys are attracted by the light because you can be sure that whenever we are enlightened, we attract those who are still in the darkness. Those who are suffering are attracted by the natural light that is produced by those who are in synchrony with goodness. And that's why we should serve. That's why we should pray for those who suffer. That's why we do our mediunic sessions in order to attend those who are suffering. It's the natural process of spiritual charity. So this guy is protected by his own magnetic field that is in synchrony with that high spirit, and naturally that spirit increases the magnetic field of that guy. You can see that the magnetic field here has one extension and here has another. Why? Because here we have a phenomena of resonance. You know? So that means that these spirits are connected with that guy on the superior chakras. And here, in the inferior ones, we have more easy connection to those who want to perturb him. Which chakras are the inferior ones? The emotional one and the sexual one, which are connected to our daily lives. So these are the fields that human beings always fall down. You know, these are our weak points on our personalities. So we should be very aware about it. So this is a natural process that happens. I will tell you a history, a case. My mother is a painter by pleasure. And one day she wanted to do a new technique that she saw somewhere. And she spent all the afternoon trying to do that technique, and she couldn't do it. And she was very, very tired of trying. And in my house, I am the only Spiritist. They are Catholic and with sympathy with Spiritism. And so my mother told me that suddenly she thought, oh, if Andrei is right, there could be someone that could help me now. So she decided to make a prayer in order to ask a painter to help her. So she asked Picasso, Tarsila do Amaral, she asked only the small ones, because she's very humble. And so she said to me that suddenly she felt something strange, and she looked to the paint and did the technique very easily. And then she looked to the effect, and then she left the brush and said, "Oh my God, it's true." Other day I was at her house and I told him, "Mom, you know that when I talk about thought, I tell your history." And she said to me, "Oh, how you say?" And I told her exactly as I told you. And she said to me, "No, my son, it was not like that." "No, mother, am I lying to them?" And she said, "Just a little bit." And I said, "Why?" "Ella, I didn't ask to Picasso, to Tarsila do Amaral, to Renoir. No, I asked to Michelangelo." And so I said, "Oh yeah, now I'm quite sure that we are very humble." So at that moment, what probably happened? There would have a spirit around her, trying to help her during all the afternoon. But she didn't give any opportunity, because we give to open our synchrony, our magnetic field, in order to feel and to receive that. And when she prayed, so she established a connection and naturally made the quantic collapse. She allowed that what potential around her to become real. And then she felt, and then she knew, and then she could, because she opened the synchrony and she stood in tune with that nature of help that was all the time around her. That's what happened with us. We are all surrounded by those who love us. We are all the time surrounded by those who want to help us. We are all involved in the magnet field of those that love us, that want to give us intuition, feelings, possibilities, opportunities, but in order to receive, we have to accept. They do not open this door by force. They need us to open the door and to say, "Welcome." And we do that when we pray, when we meditate, when we elevate our frequency, when we change ourselves by our inner efforts, when we do whatever we can to change our patterns. So this is very important. But Emmanuel also said that thoughts are the generators of infracorpuscles, energy lines of the subatomic world, and create either good or evil flows, greatness or decadence, life or death, according to the will of those who express and guide them. That means that we produce mental and emotional waves that, according to the quantum physics nowadays, act as a wave and as a particle in the particle-wave duality, and then acts on our subatomic level. What is our subatomic level? All our body is composed by cells. The cells are the minimal parts of our body, and these cells are composed by substances, and the substances by atoms and subatomic particles. So our most deep root are the subatomic level, is the subatomic level. So when the wave of thought and feeling comes from the deep part of ourselves, acts on this subatomic level, changes the substance inside the cell, and changing the activation and deactivation of the genes. That means that the very nature of our feeling and our thoughts controls the process inside our cells. What the medicine think about it? the medicine and the biology has studied the genes, and until the year 2000, we had an idea that if we could describe all the genes that we have in our body, we should find the source of life. And then, when the Genome project came to an end, then we realized that we have few genes more than a corn or than an insect. So it's not the number of genes that is responsible for the complexity of life. It's the activation and deactivation, the ability to produce new genes and the interaction between them. That's what is very complex in our human nature. So after 2000, the year 2000, the biologists start another research, what is called the epigenetics. Ep means above. So epigenetics, what is above the genetics? So when the biology and the medicine start to study that, science realized that we have a very large number of molecules that control the process of activation and deactivation of genes inside our cells. Where does these molecules come from? All these molecules are produced inside ourselves when we think, when we thought, when we think, when we act, when we speak. And also are taken when we drink, when we eat, when we pass something in our skin, is absorbed. So part of these molecules are absorbed from the environment. Part of them are produced inside of us. This combination creates a large number of molecules that circulate on our blood and acts on each and every cell, producing signals that goes to the very nucleus of the cell, activating and deactivating genes. What science says is that our environment, physical and interior, produce the control of our cells. What Spiritism says? That our mental emotional waves produce waves that control the subatomic level, changing substance and changing the cells. So these are like the key and the lock. This combined, integrated, can give us a vast understanding of how our body responds to our acts and how our body responds to what we really are. That means that what happens in our cells is the natural consequences of what is being produced in our mental and astral body by our actions, by our free will, by our decision. Signals and symptoms are natural reflections of our inner life. So, when we fight against a disease or against the signs and the symptoms, it's the same that fight against the TV because of the program that we see. The TV is not responsible for that program. The TV is only a machine that can perceive the nature of the wave that comes from the station, and there on the station someone wrote a script, some characters followed the script, and something has been recorded and sent through waves to that machine that can receive that wave and express it. The same happens with us. Our body is just a screen. It's just a screen where we can see what has been recorded by our acts by the characters that we attracted by our own synchrony, in a process that we are the writer of our own scripts. So we are those who decided what we live, and our body express it. So health and sickness are natural consequences of the nature of the waves that we produce inside of us. When we vibrate goodness, when we think on good, when we speak on good, when we act on good, so we produce waves of goodness that not only surround us, but also impregnate ourselves with the vibration of love and producing harmony and balance. But whenever we are in disturbance with goodness, what we call evil, when we think on evil, when we speak on evil, when we do evil, that means every act there is apart from goodness, so we produce a source of waves that makes ourselves in disturbance. So there comes the signs and the symptoms that our body produces. So what we should do when we get sick? We should ask ourselves, what are the message that sign and that symptom want to take to me? So, what my body want to tell me? What is the message? We should ask two things. First of all, we should ask why. And then we should ask what for. Why take us to the past and to the present? What for? Give us a connection in the present to the future. But there's two different ways to ask why. One is very arrogant and is full of pride, and one is very humble. The one full of pride is the one when we ask God or ask life explanations for why we are living that, as if life needed to give us an explanation. We only do that when we feel that we are victims. When we feel that we are victims, that means that we do not take the responsibility of our lives. The feeling of being victim is always a lack of self-responsibility. But the humble form to say why is that look for the cause. And that means, what is my part? What is the part of the environment? What is the part of the action of others on my life? What is the part of the synchrony that we have established together? What we have done together. That's why that helps us. But this why needs to lead us to the what for. That means the purpose, the goal, the movement that sickness produces on us. Sometimes we cannot reach the why. We cannot understand why. But we can understand what for. I can't explain why I have diabetes or why I have hypertension. But I can understand that the hypertension and the diabetes give me limits and obligate me to take care of myself. I may pay attention what I ate, what I eat. I might pay attention what I do, when I do. So I need to take care of myself every time. Otherwise, I will be sick. I will feel the signs of the lack of self-care. Just a brief example for the what for. So the what for can only be given by ourselves. Other people do not have this answer for us. Only each and every one can give meaning and sense for its life. No one has the answer for your life for you. The meaning is not something that is done. The meaning is something that is constructed It's something that is found whenever you walk step by step, one day after another, one effort after another, and then you give meaning to your life. So meaning is not the goal, meaning is the process. Meaning is not where you will arrive. Meaning is where you are walking now. It's what you are doing now. And that's what gives us strength, to support, to cope with our diseases, to deal with our inner difficulties, to change our vices or our addictions or everything that we have that is the representation of our lacks on our hearts. So in order to get healed, in order to become healthy person, we need to pay attention in our patterns of thoughts and feelings by giving ourselves the opportunity to be aware of who we are, what we are doing, what we choose, what we can choose, what we can do, and so many other things. Okay, am I clear?
Yes.
Okay, I would like to have some minutes to respond, to answer some questions, if you want it, if you have it.
Thank you, Andrei. This is the moment that we ask questions. Yes, why not? We have questions from the web.
All right, this is Abby, who is a member here at the SSB. She's watching live over the web. Her question is, how do you handle someone who hurts you over and over?
How you handle,
How you handle.
how you put limits,
How do you deal with it?
how you deal with it.
Yes.
Okay.
Someone that continuously hurts you.
Okay. So how you handle someone that hurts you over and over? You put limits. You put limits in yourself, because if someone hurts you over and over, that means that you are available over and over.
Wow.
That means that you allow this person to hurt you over and over, because the person can continue to be what she or he is. But you have the ability to decide what you are submitted to. So you only stay in an abusive relationship if you decide to. You only keep your expectations and your illusions about that person if you keep that in your mind. So you have the possibility to change yourself. And that's what is your power. Your power is not to change the other person. Your power is to change yourself in order to put limits. But we should not put limits like this, like an aggression, how we usually do. We should put limits like this. That means there's a limit. You cannot pass this boundary, because here is my personal space, is my intimacy, is my personal life, is my own decision, is my capacity to decide for myself. But here's the other hand that says, we go together, we keep together, we help one to another. So this can only happen when the two persons want that. So a relationship can only be a healthy relationship when we decide to stay healthy in that relationship. So the best way we help others is by helping ourselves. The best way we give others opportunity to change is giving example, is giving the contamination of the love experience. And that begins with the self-love. Only who loves himself is able to love others. When we do not love ourselves, we are not able to love others. Because when we do not love ourselves, what we give to others is not love, is dependence. is emotional dependence. So we ask others to love us and replace our need to love ourselves. Nobody has this ability. Even if a person says, I will do, he is not available and not capable of doing it. So we should love ourselves deeply. That means be committed with our deep needs. Change ourselves by changing our mind, our feelings, our decisions, and whatever we need. This means self-responsibility. This means opportunity. This means commitment with what we need. And this only comes when we decide for loving ourselves and when we are aware of what we need. So that means self-knowledge and self-love that get together to produce an harmonic relationship with ourselves and with others.
Thank you for the answer, Andrei. Kirsten, I think, is it a follow-up or?
There's another question.
We'll wait a little bit. Anyone else who would like to ask a question, a comment? While we're still thinking, I'll give it to, to the personal line.
Question. So this is from Alba. For people with intellectual or emotional disabilities, how can they transform their health or become healthier, such as a person who has Down syndrome or that is diabetic?
So whenever we have someone that have some limits intellectually, mentally, or physically, to think, to be aware of himself or about the society. So we are talking about people that are very sensible to emotional experiences. So in this level, we allow ourselves to interact with these people with emotional experiences that has very deep power of transformation. So that means experience of love, of respect, and also some tools that do not act intellectually but develop another abilities of the soul. For example, arts, pictures, dance, and music, and so many others that produce different kind of interactions with those that are not mentally able to think or to decide or to become conscious about themselves. When we are talking about diabetes, so it depends on the kind of diabetes, because it's different when we have the diabetes type 1 or the diabetes type 2. The type 1 has a genetic basis, and the type 2 has a behavior basis. That means that the type 2 is more changeable. A person can be healed from the diabetes type 2, especially if that person is obese, is overwhelming that metabolism by situations that can be changed by changing its behavior. But when we talk about the diabetes type 1 or the autoimmune diabetes, or those who are insulin dependent, so we have situations that are going to become controlled but not healed during this incarnation. And we are talking about experience that the spirit has chosen before it comes to the incarnation in order to develop some kind of virtue, some kind of spiritual abilities. So we choose the tests that we need to perform during our incarnation. We choose sometimes the sickness that we need to have or the difficulties that we need to pass through. And sometimes these sicknesses are the natural consequence of what we have accumulated in our astral body as a consequence of our past acts. So that means that nowadays, in this moment, all this energy are being drained through our physical body in order to let our astral body heal it and to allow us a situation of real freedom in the future. So that's why we should understand our sickness as opportunities, as situations that want to awake us for a spiritual reality that has messages inside of it. That's why we should ask for the why and the what force of each and every situation, and changing our lives and our behaviors the best we can.
Thank you, Andrei. Paula, please.
Thank you. It seems that a lot of the illnesses we experience are coming from thoughts that are either subconscious or unconscious to us. So this process is really our salvation. We know how to work with the illness and be careful that we don't blame ourselves.
Yeah, for sure. You're talking about something very important, because our conscious life is a minimal part of our inner life. The vast majority of our thoughts come from the unconscious. But you know what? Our unconscious is also a consequence of what we decide, because part of it is consequence of what we did in the past and is accumulated there as a complex. Things that are not healed yet and composed of what we call our shadow. So we have our potentials, that situations that have not been developed yet, and they are positive things that are going to be discovered, realized, and developed. And we have also those what we call complex, which are the negative things that are accumulated there as a result of our past. So it's very important to understand that when we talk about the change of patterns, that means that we should look for the consciousness that is possible nowadays to change what we can see. But this is not the whole process of healing. We should give ourselves the opportunity to have emotional experience that change us without knowing where we have been changed. When we have experience of affection, when we have love experience, when we submit ourselves to other kinds of treatments, for example, through dance, through music, through psychological experiences that help us to access a space of feeling or of silence inside of us, we change without know what we have changed. So this does not mean that all the process of changing is based on consciousness. But this means that the process of healing includes a part of consciousness and inner efforts, and a part of emotional and affective experiences. That's why we need to be instructed intellectually, and we need to evolve morally. That means understanding and feeling of life. Understand the loss of life by our level of consciousness, and feel the life by feeling the taste of life. To know is to feel the taste, and that means experience life through the process of faith, through the process of trust, through the process of allowing and accepting to be guided and directed by the superior being that is the supreme force and guidance of love.
Thank you, Andrei. A quick question, if I may. Usually don't ask questions, but on this note that you just mentioned, in this process of rescue and going back and understanding, you mentioned briefly about the childhood. Sometimes we try to blame what we didn't have in the childhood. My question is directed to that, as far as the process of looking for something that perhaps is not there. And the second question is, since you mentioned to feed or to give what we didn't have during that time, and what is that? What is to give, and what are we supposed to give to that child?
Okay.
And the problem of not finding in the childhood the problem that sometimes we like to blame.
So, when we don't find where is the source of our problems, we should look for professional help. That means persons that can allow us to be accompanied in this process in order to make something clear and to go deep in our history to find some important experiences. But when we are aware or we blame something that happened, that means that we recognize that something, or we interpret that something lacks in our history. So that means that nowadays we can give ourselves what lacks in our history. When I continue to say, oh, my mom didn't do that, or my father didn't give me that, or they weren't there, or they should have done this, or they should have done that, that means that I continue to be a child, complaining and blaming, wanting the father and the mother to come to do now what they could not done. So that means that I do not look for them as they are, and I do not accept them and our history as it is, and I do not accept to give me now what I need. But sometimes when we change places, for example, with our mom or with our daddy, and when we left, when we leave our selfishness to look for the eyes from someone else, then we can realize that, for example, they did the best they could. I remember a guy that told me, oh, my father was never there. I grew alone. And I asked him, oh, he was never there? He said, no, he was never there. And where he was when he was never there? He was working. He was always outside home. And I said to him, oh, that's very important. And why he was working so hard? For who he was working so hard? And then he said, oh, to our family. Oh, so you are telling me that you felt the lack of your father in your home because he was always out working for your family, looking for your future and your needs. Oh yes, okay. And I asked him, has you already thanked him for the sacrifice that he did to support his loneliness in order to give you a best future? And then at that moment he changed places with his father. At that moment he could see the same reality, but not by the lens of his own need, of his selfishness, because all child is selfishness. It's so selfish. So all child look for what he or she needs. So at that moment he could see that there was also a price that the father has paid, and he felt the lack because he loved his father so much. And what lacks now for him is not the presence of that father that was not there, but is the acceptation of the father as it is, and to accept that he loves the father and he is still looking for him, and that now he can accept him in his heart and he can fulfill from the within with that presence that represents everything. So that means the healing. So that means the process of resignification. That means the process of changing. That means that the adulthood takes the child and say, now I will give you your father back. Now I will allow you to be the son of your father. Now I will be released the love that is always hide inside of yourself, because you are looking for the lack and you are not looking for what you have received. The joy of living, the joy of be alive, the joy of have a future and an opportunity. So this is just an example of how the adult can change the reality by changing the point of view.
Very much. Kirsten?
I want to tell something about point of view. Give me, please, the book Homosexuality. Oh, it's here. It's quite close. Yeah. So this is a very good book to see point of view. So describe for me what is in my hand.
A book.
A book, yes, it is a book, I agree. So describe means, tells in detail. It's a white book with?
Two red carnations.
With two red carnations? No, there's no two red carnations. No, there's no two people. You don't see well. You're not able to see really what is he. It's here in my hands. No, there is no two red carnations. Are you seeing red flowers here? No, there's no red flowers. There's only two white roses. Can you see the white roses?
No.
Yes, the white roses are here. And there is only the white roses. You can see two red carnations? Okay. Why you can see two red carnations? Because you tell me what you can see. And I tell you what I'm able to see.
That was nice.
So, what is point of view? Is the view of one point. All point of view are right. All point of view are wrong.
We call that drop blank.
Yeah. So, what is the reality? The reality is like this. The reality is when I look and I say, there is two red carnations on the cover, there is two white roses on the back. And this is a book filled by this situation. So that's the reality. So that's why how we resignificate things. When you look to the reality and say, yes, I wanted this, but there's also the other situation of the other person, the other point of view, the other need, the other ability, capability, and what else we can interpret and resignificate. And so that means that I do not deny what I've needed and what I wanted. That's not the problem. But I can also see other point of view, and I can make another point of view that is composed by many point of views. And that change all the situation. So Kirsten.
Wonderful talk. Can you speak a little bit more about the need for self-care? At least here I feel like in the U.S., perhaps otherwhere, there's much more of a collective awareness for the need for self-care and the importance of it, and the fact that only I can decide as an individual what that self-care means for me. Could you just talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So self-care is when I become aware of what I am and what I really need. And what I really need is different from what I want. What I want comes from a desire. What I need comes from my essence. The desire comes from the ego. The needs come from the self. So the desire is like a fire that burns and it's over. So Dias da Cruz once told me something that touched me. He said, the desire is like the horizon. Whenever we come closer to the horizon, another one is formed far away. Because the destiny of the horizon is always be horizon and never be reached. So he said, the purpose of the desire is to be desire. It's not to be fulfilled, realized in itself. Because the desire is a fuel, it's not a goal. The desire allows us to walk, to go through a path. But whenever we active a desire, so another one is formed, because the desire comes from a space of emptiness inside of ourselves. The desire allows us to work, to conquer, to improve abilities, but our inner transformation in our inner fulfillment only comes from love, because only love is the eternal essence of life. So that's why the experiences of love are those who fulfill us. That's why we should put away our swords. That's why we should come closer to ourselves in order to heal ourselves, accepting who we are, the way we are, what we have done, what we could do, and what the reality is. Because when we fight against the reality, we fight against giants. We have no force to deal with the reality or to be against the reality. But whenever we accept the reality, we change the reality. The reality can only be changed by acceptation. And acceptation is a driving force of life. When we look for ourselves and stay in tune with what is real now. Because what is real is temporarily. We can change, but we only change by consciousness, by experience of love. So that's why we should love ourselves, forgive ourselves, restart once again. That's why we should establish connections of love. That's why we should forgive others. That's why we should establish bridges of affection that connect us to other persons, especially those who we do not feel, with who we do not feel affinity with, or those with who we have emotional wounds inside our hearts. That's something important that I always say. People sometimes get scary when I say that, but those who we think that we hate are those that we love most. Why? Because we do not allow someone that is not important to stay for so long inside of us, unless that person is so important that we cannot let that person to get away from us. So when we look for our emotional wounds, we see what kind of relationship we need to heal. And as far as we heal these situations, the peace fulfills us. That's why the Spirit says that only when we help those who are in our magnetic fields, those that we commonly call the obsessors, by true love, we achieve the inner and deep peace. Because those who are surrounding us, or they were our victims from the past that now wants to take advantage of something that we have took from them, or they are those who are in synchrony with us, that are attracted by our own behavior, so they are our guests, our mental and emotional guests, or they are persons that are put there by someone else in order to get healed, in order to be helped. So when we pray for them, when we a patient with their vibrations and attacks, when we look to give them the best we have, so we can pacificate our souls.
Andrei, we'll let Kirsten ask one more question. She deserves it.
Yeah.
And then you can go ahead and go straight into the Fraternity Without Borders. Thank you.
Last question. This is from a health practitioner perspective. How do you what do you say to a patient who is a rape victim or a victim of sexual abuse, and how, I mean, not just from us as a health practitioner, but how do you help the patient who has been abused and help them to understand victimhood, or to be, or not to want to be a victim anymore?
I would help this person to understand that the act of violence and disrespect belongs to the persecutor and not to her. So I have written about this subject in the book Reconciliation, in the chapter about panic syndrome, and there I tell a brief approach to this kind of situation that I commonly use in my practice, and it is quite simple and quite useful. Is to guide a person into a creative visualization where that person can face that persecutor and give him back all that belongs to him and take back all that belongs to her. That means can allow respectfully that the violence, the aggression, the invasion, and the disrespect stay with the one that decides to do that. So that person is responsible for that act. And so she can take back her childhood, if that has happened during the childhood, her innocence, her ability to love or to be joy or to be spontaneous. So that is a process. But in order for a person to reach this point, to be able to do this visualization, that person needs to face some things before. For example, the duality between pleasure and violence that always happen during a process of abuse. Many women that were abused allowed the abuse because they did not realize that that was an abuse. And sometimes during the childhood, a child can allow, for example, a parent or a relative to do something because that produces a kind of pleasure, stay with that person, or a physical pleasure, and only perceive that that was abuse later on, and then accept that co-participation. It's a process. It's an important process to clean the area in order to take back what belongs to her and to allow the person to stay with what belongs to that person. And another thing is the process of victimization, that the person needs to understand that she is responsible for what she does now with herself. So this takes time, and it depends on the level of the consciousness of that person. So how can we help as health professionals? We can check in what level that person is in that experience, and we can give a little bit of more in that level. That means we allow that person to go one step further. We don't give everything at once. We realize what is that step. So if the person is a complete victim, so we just say no. You are not the victim. You are the responsible for yourself. That means that you can heal that through a process of inner reinterpretation. Even though that person does not know how to do it and what that means, the process of hearing that she is the master of herself and that she can heal herself and not be victim anymore is at that point and enough help for that person. So
Thank you.
that's it.
Thank you.
Okay. So to end this night, I would like to share a little bit with you about Fraternity Without Borders. Who knows this organization? Everyone? Yeah? Okay, so I don't need to explain. For those who assist us from Facebook, who see us from Facebook, we can suggest you to access the website fraternitywithoutborders.org, and then you can see the reality of this non-profit organization that takes care of over 2,000 children, orphanage children in Mozambique, in Africa. In Mozambique and also in Madagascar right now. Okay, so I just want to remember you that this organization has been working in Mozambique for 7 years and has built 24 learning centers where the children spend the half of the day, the other half they are at school. And at learning centers they receive food, hygiene, cultural projects, and educational. What really changed their lives. I take part into this organization. Today I'm one of the directors, and I can assure you that this is a very serious organization. All of the directors and the workers are voluntary. Only those who works on our office in Brazil and all of them that work in Mozambique are paid to do that. Only Mozambicans are working there in Mozambique. So this money really reach its goals that are helping those children in need, those vulnerable children that live in the small village of Mozambique. Mozambique has 1 million of orphans, 6,000 and 10,000 due to the HIV infection. So it's a very high rate of disease and of death due to disease. So I will end this by presenting you this short video that was recorded by children from the Texas, let me see here, from the Texas Society of Spiritist Studies that I realized yesterday. And I was amazed by this.
Every child has the right to be protected and loved. Every child has the right to eat, study, play, and health care. Every child is the hope to a better future. Unfortunately, these rights have not come to all the children around the world. Basic rights to create a future of love.
But this can be changed by an endless chain of brotherhood where one of the links is you.
We invite you to know and be part of Fraternity Without Borders, a non-governmental organization born in Brazil,
but with eyes on the poorest regions of the world, especially on Mozambique, where the number of AIDS orphans doesn't stop rising.
With about $20 per month, you can sponsor a child and give him or her all the basic and major needs.
Sponsor a child and be part of a beautiful caravan bringing them love and care.
Visit the website right now at www.fraternitywithoutborders.org for more details.
We are Fraternity Without Borders. Join us!
Yes. You cannot only make a difference, but you can be the change you want to see in the world. That's our slogan. That's what guides us. We want to be the change that we want to see in the world. That means that this organization is not worried about complaining or accusing what politicians or society should do, but we are interested in doing what we can to help those in need, those vulnerable children and those vulnerable elders that we face in the reality of Mozambique. So you can join us, you can be part of this family of love without borders, and you can, without only $20 a month, per month, change the reality of a children there. So you can register yourself on our website, and also you can see through our social medias and in our site what has been doing in Mozambique all this time. I thank you a lot. I beg your pardon for my mistakes in this beautiful language, but I did my best. So thank you very much for this time.
Thank you, Dr. Moreira. Thank you so much. And we had people on the web also saying thank you so much for a beautiful lecture.